This is the scariest audience of all. When you present to your colleagues, it's a whole lot scarier than when you're presenting to complete strangers. You have to live with them, with what you say. Before I get started today, I want you to know that I will be emailing out to you handouts rather than killing trees. I've chosen to send them PDF. I hope that's all right with everyone, but there will be a number of those. The first one will be this work called, it's a white paper called Using Bibliometrics, a Guide to Evaluating Research Performance with Citation Data. This is put out by Thomson Reuters, and I think it's one of the authoritative sources in the field on bibliometrics. The second one I'll be sending out to you is this one by Sense Academic Book Publishers. Some people want to know whether they're publishing with great book publishers and what are the metrics on that, and so I'll be sending this out to you. This ranks book publishers by A, B, C, D, and E. I think they left F off there so no one would feel really bad about where they published, maybe, I don't know what. But, then there's another one here. This is an international list of Tier 1 book publishers coming out of Australia. And then another one that I'm going to be sharing with you is this paper called Measuring Scholarly Metrics. And this was a conference that was held a few years ago on digital metrics. So you'll be getting 4 PDF handouts to help with the background of what I'm going to be presenting to you today. Now if I can find my presentation, we'll be in good shape. So, I decided to take an approach with this, and I don't really like to stand behind the mic. Can you hear me without it? Am I loud enough to have my teacher voice on? I like to be able to just answer straight up questions when I make presentations. So the first question I wanted to answer was, why have metrics at all? What's the point? This had to have some genesis, and it has to have some reason to be, or we wouldn't have it, right? So let's take a look at some of the whys behind these bibliometrics that have been introduced into the field over the last 15 to 20 years. Because before that, we didn't have powerful enough computers and internet access and ability to search databases to do the kinds of things we're now able to do with these bibliometrics. First off, this comes from that white paper I will be sending to you. With solid, objective information about production and impact, the university has a strong basis for setting goals, charting progress, making budgetary and hiring decisions, investing in facilities, and working with external agencies. That's one of the reasons bibliometrics play an important role. They help give information to decision makers about how to deploy resources, to whom and to what. Another one, because research is a central function at the university, it must evaluate its performance. It's not a simple listing of what you've done, but there's qualitative dimensions to where and what we publish as well as quantitative. And so data on research performance helps us inform strategic decisions about what areas of research the university will choose to support or build, how much research is conducted, what is its impact on the field itself, how many of the faculty members' articles are published in first-class journals, and is the number of publications increasing or decreasing. This is a way, again, for decision makers to use data to inform decisions. Now, turning to our own College of Education, looking at our own promotion, tenure, post-tenure, reappointment guidelines, under the heading of scholarship, there's this thing called essential productivity. And under that essential productivity bullet, there is this very important thing right here. You must publish in peer-reviewed journal articles. And it says you must have a mix of top, mid-tier, and regional journals. Now, no one's going to be mad if you have nothing but top-tier journals. Okay? You don't have to publish a mix if you don't want to. But what that suggests by way of our own wording and our own documents is that when someone goes up for a promotion, from assistant to associate, the journal publications they present to the panel who reviews them, whether that be at the department level or the college level, must evidence a mix of top, mid-tier, and regional journals. And the candidate has to have a way of demonstrating the fact that those journals are in fact top, mid-tier, or regional. And we're just not going to take your word for it. You're going to have to bring some evidence to the reviewers that that is indeed the case. And bibliometrics help to serve that function. Now, the other thing that's really important is it gives an additional focus, it gives additional perspective on what is a traditional process in universities, and that is to do peer review. So when you send forward your resume, your CV, to be evaluated for promotion, your peers are going to look at, using their best scholarly judgment, the quality, quantity, leadership, consistency of your work. And having bibliometrics gives a different view on that. So it's, we've been taught in our research classes, most of us, about triangulation or converging data points on a single focus or construct. Well, here we're looking at the construct of research quality, not just research quantity. And so these bibliometrics allow us to have a two-pronged focus. And they say again in this white paper, the two together, peer review and quantitative analyses of research, better inform evaluation. Quantitative analyses offer certain advantages in gathering the objective information necessary for decision making, not subjective, objective. And as we get into these metrics, you'll see what kinds of objective data they're pulling in. Okay, another reason why we would need bibliometrics. First point, it gives us a global perspective. We can look at journals published in the US, Canada, in Europe, across the globe in Asia, and see how the quality and quantity of those publications are impacting the world field, whatever that field is. Quantitative research analysis provides data on all activity in an area. Summaries of these data, a comprehensive perspective on activity and achievement. So we can get out there and get a really big picture of what's going on in the field, not just a little localized. Another one is we can weighted quantitative measures such as papers per researcher or citations per paper, remove characteristics such as the place of production or past reputation. So some papers used to just get credited more than others in the minds of peer reviewers because, heck, it came out of the University of Michigan, got to be good. Okay? So that's one of the things that bibliometrics allow us to do is get past that sort of subjective judgment. Oh, it's a Harvard paper, got to be good. Oh, it came from the University of Toledo. It's those kinds of things that these metrics allow us to get past. That color our human perceptions of quality. And the fact that universities worldwide have moved to using bibliometrics. This is not a recent trend. And this has been around for well over a decade, almost two, if you start reaching back into the earliest adopters of bibliometrics. And you can see here again from this paper that a lot of the biggest and best scientific research institutes use these metrics to evaluate the quality of the production of the people who are proposing to do research and get funding. And if you get a research project funded and you fail to produce scholarly work from that funding that is of high quality, it will impact your future ability to get funded. Okay? Because those funders like IES or National Science Foundation or National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, all of those, will be looking at the quality of the work that's produced, and when you subsequently apply for research grants, if they see that from previous research grants the quality of the work you produced out of that grant was not at the level they want, it's going to impact their decision to fund you again. Okay? So that's the why. Now it's a good place to stop. Any questions about the why? That give you a big enough, good enough reason to be interested? good in silence. It doesn't bother me. Okay, if you do have questions, write them down. We'll wrap up and have some time at the end for some more questions. So then, if we've got the question of why do this somewhat answered, then what are these metrics that people are using? And what are they good for? What are they not good for? Because there's lots of metrics out there, as you'll soon see. And some of them are good for judging the quality of journals. Some of them are good for judging the quality of the scholar himself or herself. That's kind of scary, that your scholarship could be reduced to a number, but they're doing it, and you might as well know about how they're doing it and why. All right, here are some of the metrics I'm going to jump through today. These aren't all, but it's a pretty good list. Okay, the first one is the Journal Impact Factor, or JIF. It's not peanut butter. Okay. The next one is the Hirsch Index, or often called the H Index. And I'll tell you the truth, this is one of my favorites, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The Book Publishers Rankings, BPRs. Paper counts, simple paper counts. The I-10 Index, which Google Scholar uses, as well as the H-Index. Google Scholar uses the H-Index. Citation count, average citations per paper, another way of looking at impact. Expected citation rates, or what we call the ECR. The Crown Indicator, or the C-Index. Collaboration indicator. So if there's multiple authors on a paper, we now have ways to kind of pull that apart and give credit to collaboration. And some granting agencies are very interested in whether or not you have a record of working with, successfully working with a team of people and collaborating to produce a great outcome. Disciplinary index, so we can get right down into a discipline and look at that index, because if you look at medicine, for example, their index factors are far higher than education. Okay? Much, much higher. Science tends to be higher. Business tends to be higher. The further you move into the social sciences, the lower and lower the indexes seem to go. The Scientific Journal Rankings, or SJR, and trend analysis. So we'll take a look at each of these fairly quickly. So that's a listing of them. Now let's see if we can kind of understand a bit about it. Paper counts. This is the most rudimentary thing we do. How many did you publish? Okay, you've been here 6 years, you published 6 papers, or 12, or what? Count. Some people refer to that as bean counting. Okay, it's very, very rudimentary. It doesn't say anything about quality or leadership or any of those other kinds of things, collaboration. But that's one rudimentary thing that we can use. The next one that I listed was the JIF, or the Journal Impact Factor. This is a measurement that is applied to journals themselves. And the impact factor of a journal represents the average citation count. So how many counts an article in a journal gets, okay, among the articles published in that journal over a 2-year period. So it's a rolling 2-year average. So what was a 213 is not in 215. The journal could change in terms of its impact, and they often do. And it's based on the number of citations that an article gets among the number of articles in that pool of articles published by that journal in that 2-year period. And that's called the Journal Impact Factor. That's how it's calculated. Now here comes the Hirsch Index, which is, again, my favorite, because it takes more into account than most of the indexes do. Now the Hirsch Index, or H-Index, is a distribution-based indicator. That means that it's a statistic that reflects a proportion of the number of papers in a given data set having N or more citations. So if we're looking at a scholar, for example, we looked at somebody like Shirley Bryce Heath, and we were to look at the number of papers she's published in her career, okay, and the number of citations that those papers received. Okay? So it'd be a kind of a division thing here. Number of papers against the number of citations. You get an average number of citations. And that would give you your H-index. Now, if we take a subset of someone's work, it's going to be usually lower than the whole set of their work, just because there's more variance. But the thing I like about the H-index is it isn't just a sheer citation count, and it isn't just a sheer paper count. It's a proportion of the two, which gives you a more fine-grained measure of someone's work. Okay? And that can be used both on journals and on people. The H-index can be calculated on both. It reflects the productivity and the impact in one number. This metric is useful because it discounts the disproportionate weight of highly cited papers or papers that have not yet been cited. For example, the citations per paper for a group of 5 papers could be 12.2, but the H-index is 2 because only 2 papers out of the 5 received at least 2 citations. So what it's really trying to do is sort of take out the high points and low points of your record, smooth them, and give you a pretty good average of where you stand in terms of numbers of citations per paper you get. So a person could have 70 papers published with only 1 citation per paper, and you'd have an H-index up. Okay? Which isn't great, by the way. That's not what you want. Questions on the H-index? Leslie?
So the H-index only, and I guess the SJR, only look at journal articles published. It wouldn't count, for example, if I published an article in a journal and it was cited by a book chapter.
No. We haven't gotten that sophisticated yet. But it would be great if we could. Because then you've got all these sort of second generation and third generation sites that don't get accounted for.
Ray,
Yes?
so you said that it could be both
Yes.
on Scholar and on journals.
And journals, yeah.
So where's the H-index on Scholar? Like, where do you find that?
Right here.
Okay, gotcha.
Google Scholar calculates an H-index for the authors. If you ever go in there and you get into somebody's Google Scholar account and they've opened it up for people to view it, they can either make it public or private. Okay? If you get into a public one, it'll usually have an H-index and an I-index for that author. Okay, then it will list their publications, how many citations each publication got, and then it will calculate the H-index, which is the number of citations per paper that person has in their record. So that's one place you will see an H-index used quite a bit, is in Google Scholar. Again, that's a way to look at you as a scholar versus an H-index that's reported for journals in something like the scientific journal rankings. And that's calculated based on the number of articles again, the impact factor versus the number of papers calculated in the journal, not you personally as a scholar. Alan?
Maybe you'll be getting to this, but then is there another index for what makes a good index number? So let's say you have that 12.2. Is that high, medium, low?
That's why when I look at these, for example, if I'm reviewing a tenure document and I'm looking at someone's paper that they've put in front of me with all their journals, I will go through and look at what their H-indexes are to the journals. If they haven't got them, I'll look at them. Then I'll take the full database, and I don't know if you've noticed, I'll show you this when we get to it, the SJR database. There's a little Excel spreadsheet up in the corner you can click on and download the entire Excel spreadsheet of all the journals in a specific field. And then you can go across all the measurements, impact, H-index, and calculate ranges and mediums, modes, okay? And that's what I do. I look at what's the average H-index for, let's say, the field of education. And I'll put that in the paper and then say, this person's publishing in journals that are, with these H-indexes, it's clear to see they're higher than the average. Okay? And then they also divide them up into quartiles and all other kinds of measures. Okay, so here's a Google Scholar, that's me. Okay, and then over here they have my H index and my I index and whatever. And you can see year by year how that worked, the number of pubs and so forth. They list all the papers and the citations for each blah, blah, blah. But that's a Google Scholar account that will tell you what your H index is. Okay, and generally speaking, the higher the H index, the better. Okay. In education, the average H index for individual scholars is about 11, which isn't great. I mean, if you were in medical field, it'd be 170 or something, you know. So education just doesn't get the citation rates and recognition that medical journals would, or science journals would, or engineering journals and business. Social science journals tend to be on the low end. Okay, and then there's the business of publishing your work in books, okay, with book publishers. And again, not all book publishers are of the same quality. I think we all know that. I think any one of us could say, you know, that a book published by, you know, Oxford Press is somewhat better than a book published by ABC or something like that. You know. It just, we know that. But if you're looking for a place to get actual lists of book publishers and where they stand in relation to one another, then this book publishers ranking list is one you're going to want to have access to. And that's one of the documents I'm providing. Okay? And again, they list them from A, B, C, D, and E, and they tell you what each of those mean. E does not mean it's a flunky. It just means it's a different kind of publisher, and it explains it. Okay? The I index, which is another one that they put out on Google Scholar, on individual scholars, is the number of publications with at least 10 citations. That's the minimum to cut them off. So if you have a paper that only has 6 citations, it doesn't get counted in your I index. So I indexes tend to be a little bit higher or lower than your H index would be, depending on how many papers and how many got 10. But it's just another way of putting a metric around things. Citation counts, pretty straightforward. How many people have cited your article? Or how many people cite this journal? Okay. Now, a few years ago, Texas A&M University went to citation counts as their primary metric. Faculty quickly figured out, hey, if that's the name of the game, I'm not going to try to publish in Harvard Ed Review. I'm going to try to publish in these open access journals online because they get what? Far more citations because they're free and everybody can get at them. Where if you want to look at the Harvard Ed Review, you've got to have a subscription or be able to get to a university library to even find those journals to look at. So they found a way to beat the system. Well, sooner or later that got picked up and they put in some other metrics. Because what was happening there was we were using a single count to make a judgment, which is never a good idea. Okay, then there's this one, average citations per paper. This one is sometimes called impact. And it's computed by dividing the sum of citations by the selected set of papers for a defined period of time. So you can calculate your impact factor for the last 10 years, the last 5 years, the last 20 years, your whole career, whatever. I'm just going to give you time to read that. I don't have to read anything aloud. Any questions on that one? Next one, the expected citation rate indicates how often a paper is expected to be cited based on its year, publication, journal, and article type. Okay? You don't see this very often, but some people think it's important to know. You know, are you exceeding what would be the expected number of citations publishing in that journal? So it's almost like an average of the number of pubs that you would expect to see in that journal over the last 2 years, and is your paper doing better or worse than that? Crown indicator is the sum of the actual citations divided by the sum of expected citations. So you're taking in that ECR and dividing, using it as a number in the calculation. So it's trying to normalize, again, the number of publications in a journal with what your article is garnering as citations. then this one, this is a fairly new one, the Collaboration Index. Have you ever heard of it? This one's an attempt to try to figure out, how authors work in collaborative settings and to credit them for their work in collaborative arrangements. So they include rates of co-authorship for pairs of authors, institutions, and countries. So what we're trying to do is to see, is the Research Institute at the Montreal College of Education better than the Research Institute at the University of Wittenberg in Johannesburg? And are those two institutes comparable, or are these authoring groups comparable? You can do all these sort of collaborative analyses. And again, funders like these numbers because then they can rank certain institutes or centers or authoring groups, think tanks, as to whether or not they're going to have the best potential for their money to be spent well if they give it to this group or that group or this institute or that center. So you have to know that some of these numbers place fairly high stakes in the game of getting funded for research. Then there's this disciplinarity index. And this is a metric that indicates the concentration and dispersion of group papers over a set of fields. And it can be expressed as the sum of squared fractions. I've never done this one, so don't ask me any of the ins and outs of it. I just know it exists. I've seen some numbers. A value of 1 indicates total concentration in a single field of, or if it's spread out more interdisciplinary, then it would get further away from 1. And so if you're a person that's interested in funding interdisciplinary research rather than disciplinary specific, you want this index to be fairly low rather than high, because the closer it gets to 1, the more it represents a single field. Again, NSF will use this kind of thing for interdisciplinary grant decisions. Trend analysis, time series. Basically, you understand what that is. What's the trend looking like? Okay, are you getting in better and better journals? Is your H-index going up? You could be doing a trend line for almost any of these metrics. More citations, fewer, so forth. This is the one I use a lot. Because it's free, and there's another reason I like it a lot. It reviews and calculates a number of metrics, bibliometrics, for the largest set of journals of any website that does this business. I think it's close to, I don't know if I put it in here, 17,860 something journals that they monitor annually and calculate these impact factors, EG values, all kinds of different H-indexes on these journals. They also divide them up into quartiles. So a green quartile 1 means you're in the top 25% of all the journals in that subdiscipline or discipline, and then it goes down from there. I think yellow's the second tier, third tier is orange, and fourth tier is red, and then there's no ranking in the journal. So it's the largest subset collection around, and it's free, which I like. So just in summary, the H-index up here is a great indicator of author group or institution influence, or a measure of indirect recognition. So these kinds of things are really good to know about. If I want to know, is this person's work influential in the field? The H-index is a pretty good indicator of influential in the field. Okay? As is this thing called second generation citation counts. Again, those are a lot harder to access, and they're just now getting them going, but that's that question of, well, what about if I get cited in this book chapter? Okay. And then they cite me over here for that book chapter. Okay. That one's really a lot harder to get at than the H-indexes. Measures of efficiency are average citations per paper. Measures of relative impact, okay, meaning what? Relative meaning in comparison to something else or someone else. Okay, percent of cited or uncited papers would be an absolute measure. The journal impact factor would be a relative. And percent cited, uncited papers would be a relative benchmark. And then these two are relative types of measures. And they're good over here. I gave you this chart so that if you ever want to look at it, you can go back to it. I'm going to mail the presentation out as well as the handout, so you just have at it, enjoy, throw in the garbage, whatever you want to do it. Trend analyses, etc. So you just have this at your fingertips. Okay? But I thought this particular table was useful for people wanting to know, well, if I want to measure my own impact, what's the right measure? If I want to know the journal's impact, what are the right measures?
Ready?
Yes?
If I may, just a couple of questions. What about authors who cite themselves over and over and over again over there?
It's called arrogance, and we have a factor for that. Or myopia, one or the other.
Attacking the H factor, or H. But the others, what about a work?
If you look at the SJR, they look at self-citation rates on that website too.
Okay. What about a work that's cited over a long period of time that continues to have high numbers of citations over a period of time? Is that also measured?
Yes, there is a metric. It's not reported much. I did a 50-year study of the Reading Research Quarterly a couple of years ago, and it was really interesting to take a look at that very question. And what we found out was, if you really want to be quoted a lot for a long period of time, don't publish original research. Publish research reviews or meta-analysis. They're the ones that stand for a very long time and get a lot of citations. An empirical original study doesn't get nearly as many, because it will eventually get folded into somebody's meta-analysis, and then their study will get the cites, and yours will be left in the dust. So if you really want to get big citation rates, you now know how to do it.
Do any of these matrices take into account the fact that you might have been the first author as compared to, say, the fifth author on a paper?
Yes, that collaboration index you can use to pull out how much influence that you have based on authoring place. But most people just judge that based on the line of authors.
Okay.
With the first author usually being the corresponding lead author on the paper.
Okay.
And some universities actually say that. You either have to have a single author or lead author pieces
Yeah,
Okay.
in your setting,
in your list of journals.
Yeah, okay.
Other questions? Trying to go fast here so we don't miss. So where can you find all this stuff? All right, first place to find it is this website. Again, I'll be sending this to you so that you can look this up. It's also hot link there. So it should, if you click on it in the presentation, it should hot link its way out to this. When you open it up, it'll look like this. So this is the SJR's opening page. You'll see that up here there's subject areas and subject categories and all kinds of things under here, dates. And then up here there's a search window. So if you're looking for a particular journal, say you're looking for the Journal of Educational Psychology, all right? Then you would type that in here and then hit the little magnifying glass for search. It will kick it out and it will give you a link. It will open up to a link. You click on that and then it will give you all the information it has on that journal. I'll show you that in a moment. But this particular website, SJR, is really loaded with good information. And you can search by fields, subject areas like mathematics or physics or whatever, or you can get into subject categories, which would be like rehabilitation science in special ed, so you can get finer and finer grain. It'll also tell you, so you can see all the different metrics that we come across on a particular journal. It ranks the journals. It'll show you here that it's a Q1, which means it's a top quartile journal. Okay? And it'll give you a little colored box, Q1, Q2. It'll tell you which country it's being published in, etc. So what you do is you go to all subject categories, to the drop-down menu, select the category you want that's most aligned with your field of research. So if you're a linguistic researcher, you drop it down, find language and linguistics, pop that in there, and then hit the button. all the journals that are categorized as language and linguistics will pop out. Okay? And again, this is what it looks like when it comes out. You'll have the journals listed down here, and they'll be listed according to which one of these columns you want to sort by. So you can sort by quartile, you can sort by, there's the H index right there. And then you've got impact factor, 3-year impact factor, and there's a whole bunch of metrics you can go across there and sort the journals. Okay? Then you can go to the title line and click on the type of metric you'd like to use. So, like I said, you can click whether you want to have the SJR be the sorter, or the H-index, sort the journals according to that, sort the journals according to total documents that are cited, total citations. You can sort a number of ways. Well, and all that does is give you more ways of showing this is a good publication in a good place. All right. So you can scan the ranking for your journal. And like I said, they have the largest collection of journals out there they're reviewing every year, and they're growing. There's another one that's called Web of Science, which I'll show you in a minute, but it's not nearly as large. So here's the Journal of Bedside. Okay? And it has an H-index of 142. Now people look at that and go, yeah, what's that mean? Okay. Well, when I tell you that the average H-index of an education journal is 16, what does that tell you? Okay, does that tell you something? There's no other journal in the field of education that gets that high. I think Child Development gets up close to 100. That's the next highest journal in education. You know, you can go to something like the American Educational Research Journal, and it's got an H-index of like 70-something. But it is not 142. Okay, and then it gives you all these other kinds of data you want to look at. Again, make your case. Show you're in a great place. Okay. Now there's another one you can go to that's called Insights Journal Citation Reports. There's that website link. It comes up looking like this. And it's the same kinds of things. It'll rank the journals right here in this column. And then it'll have little places where you can look at the citation rates, the other kinds of metrics that they report out of that particular database. Again, it's a much more constrained database than SJR. Okay. Easy to use, available through the University of Wyoming Library. Okay. You just go to Web of Science, and then you go to that Insight Journal Citation Reports. Click in the year that you want. You click in Social Sciences or Natural and Physical Sciences. They divide the two. Usually we're on that social science side. Some of you could be on the science side too. And then look at your journals through that lens. So I made a few little case studies just for fun. And maybe we could do one and then take questions. Would that be all right? All right, so Dr. Smolkin wants to submit a high-quality research study to a journal in education. She's a mathematics education researcher. She's wondering how she can locate top-tier education and mathematics education research journals. Okay, so how's this researcher going to find out? What would she do, given what we've talked about here? What would be an indicator you'd look for? JIF, Journal Impact Factor maybe? An H-index? Okay, citation reports. Where would she go to find them?
Your favorite website?
SJR would be a good place. Or the other one, which is the Insights, Thomson Reuters Web of Science. And there are others out there, by the way, that you could go to. And then what would she do when she got in? Well, she'd look at mathematics, right? She could look at mathematics, and maybe there's no math ed journals in there in mathematics. So then what would she do? She could go to education. And would there be journals for mathematics education and education? Yes. And so she'd have to hunt around, and then she would eventually find that the Journal of Research in Mathematics Education is what? The top tier journal published by the National Council of Teachers of Math. Okay? And then she can make a pretty clear case that if she's going for a top tier publication in math ed, she's found the place to go, right? She goes there and she gets rejected. Then what? She looks for the next one down in the list. Never ever be afraid to go to the top and take the beating. Because if you don't take the beating, you'll never get any better. That's what I learned in my career was, don't be afraid to take the beating. And you will get beat. Even if you get in, you'll still get beat. Okay? As I used to tell a lot of my doctoral students, I have the honor of having been rejected by all the best journals in my field. As well as publishing in almost all of them too. But I have been rejected by almost all of them. The best story I have to tell is after I finished editing The Reading Teacher for 5 years, I got rejected by that journal on my next article.
Yeah.
I was editor of Literary Research and Instruction for a number of years, and I sent an article in, and I got a review back. This must be a neophyte researcher, can't write very well, blah, 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 blah. You know, and yet I'm the third most published author in that journal in the world. So, you know, man, you just have to understand, you're going to get a beating, okay? It's just the way it is. You got to get a little bit of a rhino high. But always try to start high, because sometimes your paper is going to get close. If it's close, they'll give you feedback on how to get it in. And if you follow that feedback, you're in. But if you never try, you'll never be. I have to say, I've had a few articles accepted that were truly surprising to me they got in. Okay? I was playing a little bit of a gamble. Well, let's try it. See, roll the dice, see if it gets in. And it did. Sometimes it did. Okay, you see the kind of idea here? What you want to do? Okay, let's just open it up to questions.
Is there a certain cutoff between the top tier?
Yeah, that's a good question. How would you define top tier? I know how I define it. I mean, there's institutions do this differently, you know. If you're at Vanderbilt, top tier journals are top 10%. Okay? My definition is top 25%. I think that's very defensible. Some institutions would call it top tier if it's anything over the average, top 49%. You know, I would say that's so close to average that that's kind of funny, but it is top.
What about disciplines that may have, they're very small, so they don't get cited sufficiently to...
Give me a good example of social studies. Okay? The top tier social studies journal, Theory and Research in Social Studies, never gets out of quartile 2.
So then you just build the argument.
So then you have to build your argument.
Yes.
Okay? That in my field, these journals don't get cited well, and the top tier journal in the field is this one, and it never gets beyond the second tier. But it is the top tier in my field. Okay? At least you're being very honest about it. Another area that gets very low citation rates is cultural studies. Okay? So, some journals you publish in may never get to top tier. Some do. But you've got to be able to what? Tell the truth about where it is and then say, but among all journals in cultural studies, this is the top tier journal. Of course, there are journals that are published cultural studies that are really great, like Harvard Ed Review and Teaching College Record and some of those.
What do you think about the library repository as an index? It's not really an index, but as a resource.
I think it's a resource, but I don't think it gives you a relative or absolute measure that is being used in the world very much. So it would be a one-off kind of an attempt at best.
Gives you a count, though, over a period of
Sure,
time.
yeah. But again, it's a mix of things. It's not journals, it's not just books, okay? And so it's not one that people use typically as a bibliometric choice. I'm just being honest.
Are the indices correlated if you have each of
typically, if you're publishing in really great journals and you're getting high citation counts on your publications, then your H-index should be pretty high. Okay, but you could have high numbers and low citation rates and still be publishing in good journals. It's just that, you know, a piece of original research that's in a very narrow discipline. Okay, even though it may be considered one of the seminal studies in that discipline, it's very narrow. Okay, you know, getting 100 citations in a little tiny area is a lot harder to get than if you're like publishing in, say, the whole field of educational research, say qualitative research, you get 400 citations. Well, you've got a much broader group of people to cite your work in qualitative research writ large, as opposed to, say, a study on how children solve mathematics story problems in the 3rd grade. Okay? Again, that is on the scholar to contextualize their work like that.
What do you think is the significance of the acceptance rate? My second part question to that, it would be, so if journal on their website has acceptance rate of 10% or 20%, but it's not listed on SJR, what do you make of it?
Pull it up, put it in. It's another indicator of selectivity. And if you're publishing in a journal, it's got a 5% acceptance rate, well, that says something. Okay? But it's very seldom. I've yet to find a case where that kind of selectivity in a rejection acceptance rate isn't also highly correlated with the place of a journal in the field.
I've seen a journal that has like acceptance rate of 20%, which I would say that's about equivalent to 2nd tier, and yet that's not listed. And SJR is all the way up to like 4th.
It's not listed in the 3rd or 4th tier, or
Yeah.
it's just not listed at all. Then it's got really low metrics behind it. That's rare. That's a rare bird. Again, it's contextualizing.
But there again, it's important to know that if you're published in a journal that doesn't make it to, say, the SJR, it's on the faculty member to contextualize that.
That's correct.
publication in that journal.
Okay. But it's just like that social studies example. I mean, if you publish theory and research in social studies, I mean, it's the best journal in the field. I mean, at least in that subdiscipline. But then again, don't forget that even if you're a social studies researcher, or science researcher, or literacy, or math, or fine arts, or whatever you're researching in, cultural studies, there are journals called journals of educational research, journal of educational psychology. There's these broad field journals that accept studies from all areas of education. And sometimes people are not looking to publish in, and yet they have higher citation rates and higher distribution rates, and are every bit as rigorously reviewed, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're narrowing. I kind of got in an argument last year in the university tenure promotion committee meeting with somebody who says, well, you know, I do research in this little itsy-bitsy field. There's only 2 journals in this little itsy field. So what are you publishing in? And this person said, well, I do law and I do psychology. And I said, well, you mean to tell me there aren't more law reviews and more psychology journals than just these 2 little bitsies that you could publish in? And that kind of took this person off guard. This person probably could have published in the Journal of Ed Psych if she had something that was really powerful and influential. Other questions? I have a few more little case studies if you want to work through them on your own. But I'll send this to you, and I'll take any more questions. Otherwise, I'm finished, and thank you for enduring. Advertised earlier, this is part of a series of trying to get a community of writers in our college that is informed and moving forward with both the quantity and quality of the work that we put out. And there's going to be a new initiative at the college about academic writing. And Dr. Brock, would you like to give a little bit more information?
Sure. I'll just follow up with what Rick said. This is kind of
Okay.
an initiative amongst us again to say, okay, now we know this information, so what are some ways we can work collaboratively to try to enact some of this? And so Debbie Martinez sent out today the information about the Academic Writing Fellows Program. And so we'd just like to encourage people to apply. We're going to be supporting this, really heavily supporting this. And it looks like a really amazing program. There is a year typo, my apologies for that. We got one of the years off, but anyway, the basic information is there, and we encourage you to apply for it. Vicki, anything else you'd say?
I would just say that these opportunities are unique in acting. And when you have that kind of opportunity, don't think, well, I'm not sure. This is a place for you that will help you develop your academic writing. And there are slots for faculty, and there are slots for doctoral students.
And since we're talking, I'll just mention one other opportunity. Also, a week from today, Judith Green is coming, and she works broadly in education. And she wants to work with us and talk with us about our academic career trajectories. So it's not just about separate articles and books that we publish, but how do we describe ourselves as scholars, and what's our career trajectory? So as the Dean mentioned, this is all in a series of opportunities for all of us to think about some of these issues together.